I'm a 40-year-old suburban mom working in kind of a corporate job in downtown DC for Fleischman, and I am lying on the ground in the hot blazing sun, rolling around in the dust, completely naked with total strangers. It's my first time at Burning Man, and at this moment I had been on the playa for about 3 hours. This might sound strange to some of you who might have been living the same kind of life that I was, but I can assure you that this was not an accident. Going to Burning Man for anybody is definitely not an accident. A few weeks before this, I was at home alone on a summer afternoon one Saturday and kind of contemplating the meaning of life at 40 and feeling a little sorry for myself and a little lonely and wondering like kind of what was going to become of me because the circumstances of my life were that I had a daughter very young, and so by the time I was 40, my daughter was almost 20, and I was no longer packing lunches, and I wasn't really taking her to basketball games and like cheering on the soccer team, and so it kind of left me really wondering where I fit. And to be quite honest, because the circumstances of my life had been that way, I never really felt quite like I had found my place and I had found my people. And so this particular afternoon, I got online, I went to Google, and for reasons I do not understand, I typed in 3 words: Burning Man Festival. Now, let me also tell you, I did not hang out with burners. I did not even know what a burner was. There wasn't any recent conversation of this. I had heard of it maybe once before. But for whatever the inspiration was, I ended up on a website. And when I got to the website, across the top of the page, in big black letters, it said, "The man burns in 35 days." I had no idea what or who this man was. I was intrigued. And so I continued to spend some time on the website, and like 2 hours later, I've now gone through like all the stories and like the video and the blog, and I learned that the man is apparently this effigy, and the man burns down to the ground on one of the last nights of the festival, and it really can represent anything you want it to. I also learned that the festival was in like right outside of Reno, Nevada, and it seemed to involve things like hardcore camping and like all-night desert dance parties and art and fire and like sparkle ponies and I was intrigued, and it also included these really important principles that you've heard about today, things like radical participation, radical inclusion, radical self-expression. I loved it. I mean, I loved this thing instantly. God, did I need radical, and I might even need to be a sparkle pony. So the seed was instantly planted. A couple nights later, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I found myself leaving my bed, walking downstairs in my suburban house in Arlington, Virginia, getting online and purchasing 1 ticket to the Burning Man Festival. Now let me remind you that I really knew nothing about this, with the exception of that website visit. I mean, I had heard of it before, probably once or twice, but I had no idea. I didn't even know where Reno, Nevada was. I thought maybe it's by California. And I guess, like the camping thing, I mean, let's face it, I did have a little experience, but, it was mostly with the Girl Scouts. And I started thinking, that we might have my daughter's Hello Kitty sleeping bag somewhere in the attic. Really, like, how hard could this be? I mean, I'm a single mom in DC. I was a punk rocker. Like, I'm a tough woman. I've got this. But there were a couple more nights of sleeplessness, and there was this like brewing anxiety that was growing, and I decided that it would probably be a good idea if I talked to somebody who had some amount of experience with this thing. And so I remembered that in my past I had worked at this creative agency for this guy named Shabir, and I knew Shabir had been to Burning Man. He was one of the few people I knew who had anything to do with it. And Shabir was living on the West Coast at this time, and we hadn't been in touch in a couple years, and so I decided that I was going to get in touch with him because Shabir was someone who was always super authentic. He always told you what he felt and meant, and I knew that he would be very direct with me. So I wrote this email and I said, "Hey Shabir, it's been a couple years. I hope you're doing well in San Francisco. Hope all is great. Hey, look, I think I accidentally purchased a ticket to and I'm thinking about going by myself. Do you think I'm crazy?" Well, the guy responded within seconds, so he must have agreed, and even though we were on opposite coasts of the country, within a week I found myself in a diner having breakfast with Shabir face to face. Apparently, there's a whole lot you need to know about Burning Man before you go, and what I had thought of is like living in the desert for a week with some people, Shabir called it surviving, and people are like planning this trip like a year in advance. They know who they're camping with, they have all their gear, they have planned out all our costumes. And so, it's immediately apparent that we need to sit down and I get this emergency crash course in Burning Man 101. So here's the basics. There's no cell phone service, there's no water, there's no electricity, and there's no internet. So I'm instantly terrified, but I want Sugar to think I'm cool, and so I'm taking notes and acting like this is all normal. And he says, Kathy, you're gonna need a really good tent, like a really sturdy tent to protect you from all the elements. And he kept using this word elements, which I had no idea what he was talking about. And apparently the elements were things like, it's 110-degree temperatures by day and 40-degree temperatures by night. And then he said, Kathy, you're going to need like a pair of really good goggles, like industrial strength goggles to protect you like from all the sand and dust storms. And Kathy, it's like whiteout conditions out there sometimes. So when that happens, you need to sit down on the ground, be very still, and remain calm, but be careful not to get hit by an art car or a random mutant vehicle. And then we couldn't even get into the costumes because already my mind was going a million miles a minute. And so, we said goodbye, and I thanked Shabir for his time, and I walked outside to my mid-sized SUV in that Suburban parking lot, and I had one thought: I'm gonna die at Burning Man. But you know what? Being tough and being a woman of my word, I boarded that flight for Reno 2 weeks later. I was wearing a corporate suit because I had just come from my corporate job in an important meeting where we had pitched a really important client. And I'm wearing the skirt that comes like a couple inches below my knee, and I've got my heels on, and I'm dragging these 2 REI duffel bags that's filled with all my stuff that's going to protect me from the elements, and I'm so ready for this. I get out to Reno, no problem. I get all my stuff. I get water, like they told me, 8,000 gallons of it apparently. I'm going to die. And I find my way out to the playa. Oh, before I left, I flat ironed my hair, because I wanted to look my best. And no idea what to expect, no idea where I was going to camp. And I pulled up to the gates, and this group of crazy-looking people covered in dust and like tutus and different colored hair come running to my car, and they're so excited to see me. They pull me out of my car within minutes, and they wrap me up in an embrace that is so deep, it is so to the core of who I am, a total fucking stranger, and they said, welcome home. I'm getting ready right now to head to my 4th year at Burning Man next month, and I can assure you that I have definitely found my place. My place is with all these crazy people that go out to the desert and celebrate life and love on the playa. And you know what? You can take off your corporate suit, you can be anybody and anything you want to be out there, you can roll around in the dust with total strangers and nobody fucking cares. In fact, they're probably going to join you. I waited 40 years for this, and I am so happy, and I cannot tell you how excited I am about the next 40 years of my life. And I can assure you, my friends, that this was not an accident.